Welcome back to the Channel for Grace Uncut podcast, a deep dive into all things magical, mystical, and transformative. It's been a minute since I have released my last episode, and it's time to bring the magic back. And I had an opportunity to interview a friend of mine that I met this last year. Her name is Stephanie, and she is of all things, a pistol instructor. Now, I met Stephanie through a mutual friend who's in the spiritual community and actually has taken some of my classes. And when I met Stephanie, I knew right away that I would be working with her personally. And a lot of you guys may have heard me talking about this. I recently moved out into the desert of Arizona. And so I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. And, my husband and I have thought about the fact that it's very important for us to have some kind of protection out here with all the wildlife and everything. And I spend a lot of time out here on my own. And so I took a class from Stephanie, and it was amazing. And it brought up this topic that I think is so interesting right now, between the idea of what does it mean to be like a spiritual being where we connect to love and light, and we want to raise our frequency and our vibration to higher expressions of love. And then also at the same time, be a badass, like a spiritual warrior. And I wanted to ask her about her experience with this, because a lot of her journey she's been on her own dark night of the soul, and she'll talk about it in the episode. But a lot of her training involves helping women step into their power and their strength. And these are women that have often or are currently feeling disempowered in their lives. And this learning how to use a pistol and protect themselves and defend themselves actually activates for them this, power that they've never had for themselves, which in turn helps them feel more connected, more alive, more within their purpose, and more ready to and safe. Because that's really the main thing about all of this topic is how do we feel, what are the things that can help us feel safe, protected, and secure in life, so that we can, and those are things that we all need, so that we can fully step into our purpose, our spiritual purpose. And so I hope that you enjoy this conversation. It was so much fun. Stephanie's really awesome. And have an amazing time listening to the conversation, and let's dive right in. Satnam, everyone, and welcome back to the Channel for Grace Uncut podcast. I am so excited today to have a special guest. Her name is Stephanie Mcganty. She is a passionate mother of two girls with a goal of wanting to feel comfortable and confident with her skills as a protector. And this is what drove her to pursue growing her skills with a handgun and a rifle. Throughout her journey, she has trained under a variety of instructors in the tactical space, law enforcement, and USPSA NRA instructors. And while on this path, it led her to start her own training company. Currently, she has guided over 1,000 Pacific Northwest residents along her firearm journey. Stephanie's focus is to help women achieve the level of confidence with their skills so that they feel empowered to be their own self-protection. So welcome, Stephanie, to the podcast. First of all, I just want to say thank you for saying yes to being on this podcast. And I recently took my very first firearm lesson from you, which is something that I had been wanting to do for a long time. But I was kind of toying with I don't know, that whole, mental kind of fear space, because for the longest time growing up, I always had this sort of fear of guns, and we can talk about that in a minute. But it was an amazing lesson, and I was so inspired from it. And it really kind of opened up this, idea in my mind that like, this is something that is so needed, especially in, the world that we live in today, especially for women. So happy to have you. Thank you for being here, and we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Jai, for having me on here. I was super excited that you invited me to be on your podcast because I love podcasts and I love being on them. And it's been a minute since I got to do one of these. So I live in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, in kind of a state that is, known for not being as gun friendly, just because of like certain parts of my state. But the
Hmm.
majority of it is not like that. So there's like a ton of people here that are into firearms and training, a lot of businesses. I grew up here, and um, I got into shooting with firearms in my early 20s when I got married. I got married really young. I grew up in a family that was really into firearms, and I had horses and chickens, and just was always outside. And um, you know, being on like 1,000-pound animals, going over jumps, and doing a lot of horse stuff, like I was kind of an adrenaline junkie in that respect. And so, um, even though I had firearms in the family, got my concealed handgun license with my ex-husband in my early 20s. I didn't really start training or taking classes till my daughters were born, and they're 9
Oh,
and 10 now. So for the last 9 or 10 years, like I felt inspired to start taking classes because I wanted to be a very responsible person with a firearm, with having little kids around, and know exactly what I was doing. And once I found out that there were fundamentals like stance, grip, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger press, follow through, and there's a process to be a good shooter to follow, I was like in it. And at that point in my life, I felt the urge to be this powerful protector to my babies, in every aspect. And so I ran with it. I joined a ladies shooting league. I took a ton of classes. And as my skill set progressed, I started training with guys that were like prior special operations, the badass warrior guys that have been overseas and then worked as CAA contractors. And I got into USPSA shooting sports and started understanding that the tactical aspect of self protection, self defense, might not be as important for me as performance shooting, which is just being very good with the skill set of a firearm. So at this point, I've had thousands of reps. I started teaching women that were following me and were friends or family, and they're like, "Hey, can you take me to the range and teach me? Because I want to know, but I don't want to learn from my husband." And I hear that a lot.
that's so
so,
interesting
so I
because
started.
actually, yeah, I had an experience where, so I recently moved out to basically the desert in Arizona. And I've never lived this sort of out in the middle of nowhere before. And there's coyotes out here, there's wildlife, there's all kinds. I mean, you just don't really know, And there's an
Mhm.
aspect of vulnerability to living like this. And I actually spend quite a bit of time home by myself because my husband travels a lot. So the whole idea of maybe I should have some kind of protection because I'm spending so much time out here all by myself. I've got two dogs.
Mhm.
And then we started thinking about the idea of like, well, maybe we should have that protection because this is actually the first place would you would normally actually should have it. And so, anyways, and
Yeah.
but also my husband knows how to use firearms and stuff, but I was like, I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it just happened that we got connected through
Mhm.
a mutual friend. And I knew the minute I looked you up because it's like, nowadays we just do like, let me see your Instagram. So when I
Yeah.
looked
Then
up
we
your
get a quick view.
yeah, I like looked up your Instagram and I was like, oh wow, she does like training for fire. I was like, oh my God. And I just got this like hit that I would be learning from you. And I didn't know exactly when that was going to happen or whatever, but I left it open. You just mentioned something about how women like to basically your friends wanted to learn from you and not from your husband. Can you speak a
They're
little bit
they're
more?
they're husbands. So they're
Yeah,
husbands. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they're husbands. And can you speak a little bit more about that and because then you've really taken it to a whole nother level now
Yeah.
in your career.
Exactly.
So yeah.
I mean, I've always known I wanted to be an entrepreneur. and have my own business. And as you know, from like my human design, I'm a Manny Gen, and I have a lot of skills and careers and things that I've collected and done over my life. So I'm like almost 40 now. I've done a lot of different things. And so what was cool about that is I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was collecting different skills and abilities that build up to who I am now, that I am collectively using to be a firearms instructor running her own training company. Because I've worked in sales, public speaking, um, I've I've done a lot of different aspects career-wise that, and then my passion and my ability with shooting, I was able to combine all of that to do this. And so my dream had been, as I started helping these friends and women learn the fundamentals and take them to the range and all that, my dream was, I really want to be an instructor. I want to do this. I want to do this so bad. I would be really good at that. I believe I would, but there was like this fear in me that of what other people would think. And it held me back for a little bit. It held me back because there's other people I knew in my family, in my life that were like, you're not law enforcement, you're not military. What makes you think that you should be teaching people? And just so you know, it doesn't matter. There's most law enforcement and military don't know shit about shooting handguns. Okay. They literally, or they're not very good. Like law enforcement, typically they go through quals like once a year, and they do, their line of work has very little to do with handgun, a lot more with like being a professional, like social worker with people on the streets and all that. And yes, they need to know how to use firearms, and a lot of them are pretty good, but unless they're pursuing it on their own outside of that, people like me have way more reps in time behind a gun with like professional instructors than most, the majority, I'd say, or a good percentage of law enforcement. So there's my soapbox on that. But anyways, so I, through time, I've worked for some other training companies throughout the years. When COVID hit, it took away my old job, which was in sales, public speaking, all of that. And I just was kind of at home like during 2020 going, what am I going to do? Because I had already been, teaching other people and having fun on the side and still pursuing this passionately. But I eventually was like, you know what? I am going to do it. Start charging and teaching people, holding classes, and I just worked my butt off. Like you wouldn't believe the amount of like places that I went to teach, like out in the woods or at ranges that I'm not even supposed to teach at, but I was doing it anyways to get started. And then I just started working for some other training companies and then advertising, and it just grew and became Bellatrix. And Bellatrix, I remember laying on the ground in my living room with a piece of paper and a pen, just like, what am I going to name my company? I got to come up with a name. And I just kept asking God to like help me come up with a name. And so I finally was after all my research, this name Bellatrix popped up, and it means female warrior in Latin. And it's also the third brightest star in the Orion constellation, which is used to be called the Amazon star, named after an ancient tribe of Amazonian warriors, like badass bitches. Okay.
Dude,
And
I'm freaking
so,
out because this whole Orion thing, like I've been obsessing, watching so many videos and podcasts with Robert Grant, and he's doing this like amazing research right now into he's ancient Egypt, the connection between specifically the King's Chamber and what's actually truly found in there, what it really is, the connection to Da Vinci's paintings.
wow.
I mean, this is insane. But anyways, the whole Orion thing, and I'm like, here's Orion again, it just clicked. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. Bellatrix is the star on the
Yeah,
Orion. I'm just,
it is. Yeah.
and I
I've,
named my
I've
dog
like,
Ithaca, who is one of the stars on Orion's belt.
oh,
What is it about this Orion thing? This is just blowing my mind. But anyways,
that's a pretty cool synchronicity. I love
yeah.
that. So during this whole like awakening with my business, I also began my own spiritual awakening at the same time. And just I was following what my purpose is. And so as I was putting myself out there, like I was just attracting more and more women, more and more people. I teach men too, but I get a ton of women that would just come to my classes, and the majority of them would all say, I just can't learn from my husband, or he tries and I don't want to. Like there's a lot of emotion that comes with having a spouse teach you something. And there's like some parts of that. There are some dudes that do pretty good at teaching their ladies, but it's a very small percentage. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, like I see it, but the majority of them are like, please teach my wife, please teach my girlfriend. and and then I get them going, and it's usually like a lot of these dudes, if they're a good shooter, like they would say, okay, everything that Stephanie taught you like is true. That's all really good. But they just because somebody is a good shooter and they have the knowledge base, it doesn't mean that they're a good teacher, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's true. Yeah,
somebody can know stuff, but not know how to teach it or the
right. I
process
agree
of
with
it.
you on that. Yeah.
And so that's where the main line is. But what's cool is I've attracted a lot of women, especially that have like all kinds of stories and backgrounds. And I ask them to share their story in class. Like, why are you here? Why do you want to take this class? And I hear anything from like domestic violence stories to I was raped, to I'm at home a lot by myself and my husband is gone a lot, or I just need to know how to use these guns in the house if something happens, or how to protect myself if something happens. And it's a pretty good variety, but yeah, women are not wanting to learn from the dudes in their life. They want to learn from a female instructor because they can relate to me. They feel safer. They feel more comfortable. I can joke with them and say things like, you know, your workspace is at your boob line. Okay, that's where all your gun handling happens, like right here. And
Okay.
I can crack jokes the way that men can't get away with, without like being reported or something. So
Well, I can tell you from my experience, I was like so stoked because you were a woman. There was a connection. It was like I felt like excited and safer, and I don't know how to describe it, but I completely agree with this whole concept of like it is difficult to learn. I mean, especially something like this, it's so intimidating, as you're like, I would feel safer if I was with another woman. I don't even know, like, if that makes any sense, but I felt that way. And I felt like this feels right to me. Maybe, like maybe I would have found, maybe there was a guy out there that would have been a good teacher for me. But honestly, I feel like this was meant to be, like it came together for a reason. And that's usually how my life works,
yeah.
especially nowadays where I live life, and it's taken me a long time to get to this place. And this year specifically has been so much more about surrendering to the flow and letting things happen on their own and not trying to force things. I call 2024, for me, this was the year of the humbling. Like there was just a total humbling in every way, shape, and form that I've had to go through in my life. And that has actually allowed me to heal this aspect of myself where I do want to be like in control of like what I'm doing, how I'm doing, when it's going to happen and all this stuff. And being able to surrender has allowed me to really open myself up to the synchronicities that are right in front of me happening in my life. And this is one of them for me. And especially now that I just put the two and two together, my brain hadn't quite put it together that Bellatrix is a star in the Orion constellation. I don't know. I'm going to get stuck on that one. But anyways, there's something there. And yeah, so I mean, this would be like a really cool transition, because to talk about your spiritual journey, because so you have had this background of like, you worked with guns and things like that, kind of like your whole life, but you felt this really strong drive to, you wanted to teach this, and then you discovered that as you stepped into it you were really good at it and it was
Mm-hmm.
easy for
Mm-hmm.
you, and women were being drawn to you specifically to work with you. And at some point during this process, I know from personal, conversations that we've had, you went through a spiritual awakening. And I would love to know, how was that process for you? And did it have an effect on this, career that you've made for yourself?
That is such a good question. And yes, it's like a huge part of everything. Like what I do want to explain before I go into that, like I'm going to circle back to it, is how I started out being very deep in my masculine energy when I started all of this, when I started shooting and training. I was in a marriage that I was the leader, the main provider a lot, the one who was kind of in charge. And so I was very in my masculine energy in survival mode for many, many years. And training and shooting with firearms is a very masculine thing. It is. And so for me, that was like how I felt powerful, and it made up for like the lack of masculine leadership in my home environment.
Mm.
And so I just took that and ran with it, not knowing that it was going to become what it is today for me. And through the last 4 years, after going through divorce and doing a lot of healings, starting my spiritual awakening, I've been able to heal that feminine side of me and really connect with women on a deeper level so that I can really know what it means to be a divine feminine and find that part of myself and nurture her, be in that Empress energy, and love myself. Like the last 4 years have been just a deep journey of self-love. And I went through like several dark night of the soul experiences, where
Mm-hmm.
you're just like laying on the floor or on the couch, just like sobbing uncontrollably, like processing and releasing trauma that I had so much pent up emotion and trauma from like my childhood, my whole life, that I had to process. I feel like I've rapidly done that in the last 3 years. And it's put me in a place to be like a more compassionate, humble, understanding, loving, confident person. Because I've in that journey just been basically getting to a place of being confident and knowing who the fuck I am. Finding out who the fuck is Stephanie. Like, who is she, right?
Love
And
it.
finding
Yes.
out who I am and being confident in that and not having to prove myself anymore. And what you just said about the last year, like that experience for you resonates really hard for me because that's like what I've been going through this last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of struggles in raising children by myself, um, and running a business and, healing a lot of deep things in my life. Like going through a spiritual awakening took me from like growing up very Christian, going to Baptist churches, Foursquare church experiences my whole life, being very controlled, very programmed into like everything is this way and it's black and white and nothing else is right. That's only this. And then me allowing myself to question these things, to question what I've been taught, to realize that this is not the only truth, that it's okay for me to ask these questions. It's okay for me to expand my knowledge. And it's just literally opened up a whole world. And the people, the women I have met in the spiritual community have just been like my soul tribe, my sisters who love me for who I am authentically. And I want to cry about it because I've never felt that level of love from other people
Mm.
until I met women like you, like Heather and other women I'm really good friends with, that have awakened me to deeper understanding and compassion and love for myself. And because I was taught that self-love is bad, like you're not supposed to love yourself. Like basically, I grew up in a home that like you're supposed to hate yourself and feel shameful and guilty about everything all the time. And so walking away from that and finding that my depth and relationship with God is deeper now than it ever was, um, has
Right?
just been it's such a beautiful thing to have that now, to really trust and like see the things that I've been praying for manifesting like come to fruition just by surrendering, by letting go. Like I know since you're so into astrology, right, that like my two biggest soul lessons here learning is a lesson of like worthiness and surrender. So that self-love, self-worth, growing up in a home run by narcissists, like, and being a codependent for a long time, that's been a big thing that I've had to defeat and move through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say defeat, but like it is a battle.
Conquer.
Yeah, it's a battle, man.
Yeah.
So, when I tagged you on Instagram the other day and called you spiritual badass, so you
I
took
was
my
just gonna
class.
bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, let's bring that up. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that because that's so awesome.
Yeah. No, so it was funny because I have what I would call like a spiritual business, and it's very girly. You know what I mean? Like I've
Very
pink and
feminine.
purple
Oh
and
yeah.
pastel colors. Yeah, very feminine. And I kind of hold that frequency very strongly, you know? And but also in the spiritual community, there's this like I don't know what it is. There's this sort of like, well, I do know what it is. It's this like idea that love and light cannot hold things like guns. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
two seem like they're on opposite worlds, and it's been this really interesting thing for me to try to understand, because like you, I have very strong masculine qualities about me, even though I'm also very strongly feminine.
Hmm.
And there, you know, and for me, it's this I have this Mars in Scorpio and I have Saturn in Scorpio, and they are conjunct. And so Saturn is authority, Mars is drive and action. Mars in Scorpio is very strong because it's in its home sign, but it's like the freaking Kali energy. Like
Wow.
Kali, you know, Kali is like,
Yeah.
she comes with swords and, you know, she cuts heads off and shit. So like
Yeah.
that energy lives very strongly in me. And I'm like, well, what about, you know, and so what I've recognized is that it's not all love and light. Like the world is dualistic and we live in this place of shadows and
Hmm.
lights, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
sometimes that strength that it takes for us to take leaps of faith, like in our life, that is not like love and light. That's like grit and
Yeah.
like courage
It's
and
like
like
savage warrior stuff,
yes. And
literally.
so I would, oh my God, I love your cat. I would love
Mittens.
I would love for more people to truly embrace like the beauty and the nature of like that reality that of the world that we live in. It's like sometimes it's all good. Sometimes you gotta warrior up and you gotta freaking plow through shit. And then sometimes you have to relax and surrender and receive. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
balance between the two. And so when you tagged me on Instagram and called me a spiritual badass, I was like, wait, that actually really resonates because I do feel like I'm a spiritual badass. And after having just one lesson with you, which is crazy because my whole life I grew up like, oh, I hate guns. No, fuck guns. Like, get them out of this world doesn't need any guns. You know, it's like too much violence. And do believe that in some, still in some way, because
Hmm.
I would like to see a world where the guns were not needed. But the truth is that in the world that we live in today, and guns are just the modern, it's been around forever,
Hmm.
right? Like guns are just the modern version of like types of
Hmm.
protection, types of self-defense. Anything that you use the wrong way is the wrong way. You know what I mean? But in
Yeah.
this case, you're learning like how to be careful with it, how to be responsible with it, how to basically
Hmm.
just it's like teaching you that you can protect yourself, that you're not so weak. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that is what I feel what you're doing is really giving to humanity, especially women, is like this.
Hmm.
I felt so strong afterwards. Like I felt like a spiritual battle. I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like it just awakened something in me, and it made me feel like, oh my God, like I felt more seen, or I felt like stronger in myself. And I think that especially as women, we do need to know that about ourselves, that we're strong enough, we're good enough, we can take care of ourselves, but at the same time, we can also be in our divine feminine. So it's just like,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, that's my 2 cents about that.
Yeah. And it's taken me some time to balance that
Yeah,
because for a
right.
while I was like, here's spiritual feminine Stephanie, here's gun shooting Stephanie. Like, how do I bring that together into one
Mhm.
person, like
And is it
cohesively?
possible to
How is
bring
that
them
possible?
together?
I'm
And
like, it
yeah.
is. It is possible. And so I feel like I have done a good job of integrating all the parts of myself
Hmm.
throughout the last year and a half. That's been like a challenge for me because I didn't want to like discard any parts of who I am, because those things all make me who I am. And I love shooting and I'm very good at it. I'm very good at teaching. And I'm also like, a Reiki healer now and a quantum healer. I speak light language and I do all this spiritual stuff with ladies, and I'm
When
a
we were
mom.
doing our class, remember
Uh-huh.
I was like working at my desk that I normally work at with Channel for Grace, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and I've got tarot cards all over the place, and then there's this gun. It was like, this is like something out of a gangster movie. It was the
It's so
funniest
cool.
thing
Your
ever.
your new your new hashtag on everything is going to be spiritual baddie. Okay, we can shorten it. Instead of badass, it's going to be baddie, spiritual baddie. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
And
I
yeah.
love that, and it's just, yeah, integrating those parts of ourselves. Like, I cannot begin to tell you the amount of women who have come to my classes that are, Reiki healers, spiritual ladies that were like nervous and scared at first, but they really felt drawn to learning this skill set. And many of them live like in the Portland area. And for the last couple of years, there are many people who used to be like afraid of firearms, against them, all of that. But then suddenly there's like people camping on their front lawn that there's no way the police are going to get there in time to help them if something happens. And so it's either me or them. And so when I have to make that choice, because not everything, like we're saying, is black and white. We got to make a decision. And if you know within yourself that I would rather survive and live or protect my kids than allow this person to harm me because I'm all love and light. It's like love and light. I can put all kinds of spiritual protection around me, but at some point, we also have to be able to take actual action. We may have
Needed.
to.
Yeah, if needed. Yeah.
I have been through situations where I might have needed my firearm, but I'm glad I didn't. Like, my goal is to never need one to protect
Right.
myself. Like,
That's what I was gonna
I
say. The
I
whole
don't
point.
ever want to shoot
I
someone, okay?
know,
I
I know.
never do.
It's not even
Um,
about, yeah, it's not even about you getting to use it. Not even
yeah,
close to that. This whole thing that we're talking about, and I do want to make this clear,
yeah,
is that just knowing how to use it is empowering. And
it
that
is.
that
Yes.
moment of being empowered is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay. I get your vibe on that. I agree. And I've explained this to people. I'm like, I have a lot of women that come to me just for that. Like, they want to feel this level of, man, I'm so powerful that this tool that is dangerous, it's very destructive, but I understand how it works now. I know how to load it and unload it, and I can shoot it accurately. And there is this depth of like powerful energy that courses through you, and confidence in yourself. You like walk different. You just have a different presence. So
Right?
yes.
Yes. Yes. And because of that, and this is the key here, because I'm all into like the energetics of things, because of that, you probably will never need to use one because people will not fuck with you out in
I
public.
agree.
You know
No,
what I mean?
absolutely. Yes, your energy can come across as somebody who looks like a victim, or they look like someone that, because criminals would only want to go after someone who's easy anyways. They
Right?
don't want to go after someone that is confident, is walking tall, looking them in the eye, and just
Mm-hmm.
your presence announces
Right.
whether you're a target or not.
Just that itself energetically will change your life because when you like that amount of self-confidence that can really only come by learning your own strength. Like that's really what this is about. You're like learning that you have strength and that you're capable. How many not just women, but like how many people in this world, like me and you, we grew up literally. I had narcissistic abuse, emotional and
Hmm.
mental abuse growing up, and and I've worked through that, and I now have a great relationship with my mom, a much more healthier relationship with my mom. I had to learn to like, set boundaries. I had to learn where my weakness and my vulnerability, like not vulnerability because that's not a weakness, but where my feeling of like lack and insecurity was coming from, and it was from this emotional and mental abuse that I feel like we all experienced as children. Our parents were just trying to do their best with what they had. Like I understand that fully now, right? Like I don't
Hmm.
blame my mom or my dad for anything that they did. In fact, they taught me huge lessons in life, and now I see what they gave me as a gift that has made me who I am today because I'm on this spiritual journey. I have
Hmm.
always been searching for the truth, and I've always preferred truth to like lies. And so I have gained my strength from like finding healing, you know, from the past.
Hmm.
And sometimes it really does take, this is just one example of so many different ways that you can become empowered within
Yeah.
yourself, that you can find more confidence within yourself. This just works for some women. And that's why I wanted to bring you on onto the show, because it's kind of like a wild thing. It's a wild
Hmm.
topic, but it is very, very present in our day, in our world today. And yeah, so
And I was kind of surprised that you wanted to talk about any of this on a podcast because you're like, "Ooh, I wonder what my audience is going to think about me like handling a gun." Like because there are a lot of women, like you said, and men too in the spiritual community that are like all love and light, and then they view these kind of things as like the opposite of that to a degree. And one thing I wanted to add about that I was thinking about before we got on here was, there's many of us that resonate with like maybe our ancestors or who we are in our past lives being burned at the stake as a witch, right? So
right.
you think about that witch wound, like women, for a long time didn't really have a way to protect themselves, and so they needed protectors. But then, in many of those generations during those times, like the protectors weren't protecting these women from, what was happening to them. So if those women at that time, I feel like there's a part of me that is serving my ancestors and women from generations before that had no way to stand up against the patriarchy or tyranny. That there's like an empowering part of me that is stepping forward to extend a hand to women who needed to gain that empowerment to take back, the power that was stolen from them in different times. And if those women at those times were able to wield a sword and had skill or knew how to protect themselves, what could they have stopped from happening to them? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so we're like in a lifetime now where women have access to ways to empower and protect themselves more so than they ever have in any other time in history. And so this is a really unique and I think beautiful way to do that. And it isn't for everybody. Like I'll say that it
Right.
really isn't.
Right. I
There's
agree with you.
there's
Yeah.
a there's a lot of women that will never ever pick up a firearm, and they never want to, and they
I
don't
was
have to.
scared to touch it. I swear to God, like I was
Yeah,
scared to touch it, and I was like, ah, like just freaked out about it. It's so weird until you showed me how it works, and then I'm not afraid of it anymore.
yeah. And you were really easy to teach, and we did all this on Zoom, which is even more impressive. And I will say that your ability to understand your mind body or mind muscle connection made it a lot easier
Hmm.
because the way that I teach and describe things made sense for you because you're doing yoga, you have a lot of good self awareness, you have a good connection to your body. And so, as I'm instructing you and showing you, you're picking it up like that, which was awesome. So easy for me to teach you.
You mentioned something about, we had a conversation at some point, and you mentioned something about, yes, like how there are some souls in this world that will never even touch anything like this, and that
Hmm.
somehow you feel like that you would be able to protect those souls in this lifetime, and that you felt like in a past life you were some kind of a warrior. Can you speak to that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. There are women I have met in the spiritual community that are just, they're literally full, and I'm a healer. Okay, I'm a healer, but I'm also many other things. But I meet these women with this healer, deep, emotional, soft, loving, nurturing energy that their soul will literally quake at the thought of holding a firearm and ever, be faced with having to shoot somebody. And there are women who have that like I don't want to say Amazon warrior vibe, but like I am all these things. I'm feminine, but I can also be the one that would step forward and protect those that are in that space. And so there's nothing wrong energetically with somebody feeling uncomfortable or dislike of handling a firearm. Like maybe they're just not meant to, but there are those of us that would step forward to protect that maybe because of my experiences in this life and prior that I have the ability to do that and I'm meant to. And not everybody is.
Hmm.
Does that
Yeah.
help outline?
Yeah, no, that's great. And it really highlights this and the reason why you're like, oh, surprised you want to do this podcast, but I want to actually bring in the idea that like what is happening here, with this whole like spiritual vibe is it's really not all about just love and light. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
there are moments in our lives where we are feeling the bliss, we are feeling the elevated, consciousness. But it ends up getting to a point where like you see these really dark things going on in the world, and then it gets
Mm-hmm.
really confusing because you're like, but if it should be all love and light, then how, like why are these bad things happening? And that's just
Mm-hmm.
a lack of understanding of how the universe works, specifically like, here, earth, the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. And humanity, like we're here to live this human experience. And there's a lot of darkness in that. There's also a lot of
Right,
love
there's
and light.
dark and light. Yeah, there's
And we're
both.
finding our journey back to ourselves in the process. And in that process, sometimes we come across things that are just really awful. And,
Yeah.
we can't force everyone to see things the way that we do, right? And there's always going to be that. And so having the ability to like stand up and be brave, be be that warrior, not only as a spiritual warrior, but like some of us physically are doing both.
Yeah, and there's not, so I'm thinking what the word that keeps coming into my mind as we talk is archetypes. And,
Yeah.
so like we're just basically speaking to different archetypes. You can embody any and all of them at any
Mm-hmm.
time, in your life. It's like, can we free ourselves from the judgment? Can we free ourselves from the, getting so attached to things being just one way? Can we open ourselves up to the reality and the truth of how the universe works and how, life works here on the planet, and recognize that you can be spiritual and also be someone that knows how to use a gun and protect yourself? And you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's
Yeah.
not just about women. It's everyone,
Yeah.
and to me, that has been like a progression of learning and understanding how everything works that has led me to realize it's all here, it's all present. And there's aspects right now, or like there's a awakening happening in humanity where between like men and women in general, right? And
Yeah.
so in the masculine and the feminine, but it's a lot, it's really about like the role of men and the role of women on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
just something happening. And men, it's like the women have for a long time felt that sort of like being overpowered energy. However, more and more I see nowadays that women are recognizing that when they are fully in their feminine, you know, holding space, very yin like energy, like that doesn't mean weak. You know what I mean?
No,
That
no, not at
actually
all.
means seriously strong and
Yeah.
solid. And then like, so what needs to happen in the world right now is you have to have like the women have to heal, the men have to heal, and then
Mm-hmm.
the relationships between the two will heal, and then the children will heal. So it's like
Yes.
this, it's like that's what I wish for the planet. Is like when we just fully embody our authentic selves, and I would say like in our light, but that light doesn't mean that it's like love and light in the way that we, what I'm talking about, like popular
Yes. Yes.
popular spiritual culture like just has this idea that there should be zero darkness, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just not how the universe works.
Yeah. in the process of doing a lot of inner work, I have faced and seen my shadows, like my shadow self, and doing the shadow work, we call it. And it is like a brutal but beautiful process to see that and embrace all parts of yourself that people shy away from and they deny that it exists. And um, one thing I wanted to add real quick was in the firearms community, in the space that I'm in, that there's a lot of firearms instructors and trainers and people that are like pretty big deals in social media. I have witnessed and seen a lot of these people going through their spiritual awakening. I just know I can recognize another starseed, like another person who's in the same community as me, doing the same kind of thing. And a lot of them are men too. These divine
Right.
masculine, like very masculine men that are like these provider, protector, males are stepping up to lead. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. And so, when you and I talked the other day, I had mentioned this to you that I have noticed that there's, you were like kind of surprised, like, oh, there's spiritual people who are in this like gun world. Like, yep, they are. They may not, promote it the way that a lot of people in the spiritual community do, but I know what to look for. Like, I recognize them very easily. Like, I've met
Mhm.
many people in my soul tribe through all of that.
Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to do this podcast, is just to plant the seed, that for some people, the pain and the suffering, like you're talking about the shadows. Teal Swan talks a lot about this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a aspect of her work that I really appreciate, is that she really says you got to go in. You cannot heal like the darkness that's here from like this space over here. You have to go into the darkness and fully feel it and accept it and be with it, not
Mm-hmm.
even try to change it, but just be with it in order to heal it. Right. So, like, a lot of us do this avoidance thing. We're like, positive thinking, positive thinking, positive thinking. And then it's like,
Yes.
well, nothing changes because the real true work it's darker than that. You know what I mean?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I just got the chills because I screenshotted this last night before I went to sleep because it was really impactful to me. This character in this book I was reading was going through her own like awakening, like darkness, facing out like she was hurting people because she wasn't willing to face the aspects of herself that she needed to face. And so she would hurt people in her life without because she wasn't healing. And so she said, I don't know how to fix myself. And he said, there's nothing broken to be fixed. You are helping yourself, healing parts of you that hurt too much and perhaps hurt others too.
Mm, yep. Yeah. And
And
in
so
that,
like it's like people hurt people because there's parts of themselves that are hurting that they're not willing to face or look at.
mhm.
And once they do and they have that compassion and love for themselves, then they can extend that to other people and it rolls across.
Yeah. So I used to live my life and I used to be really angry, like angry at this, angry at that, angry at my past, angry at, why was I given these things to deal with in my own life?
Mm-hmm.
But the more I did the work of accepting those shadows, seeing them, being with them, not being afraid of them, giving myself compassion, learning that in order for me to truly, be loved, I have to love myself. And in that process, I learned how to love others, and be compassionate towards others. And I mean, it's like your mind goes from this like little tiny little box to like whoa, so
Yeah.
much more awareness, and you change. And the more confident I became, the more secure I became, like the less aggressive, the less angry, the less
Mm-hmm.
like that, like those things served a purpose for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I live in a place that is much more balanced in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, the emotions go up and down, they come and go, but it's not something that holds me back in life. Now it has become something that actually helps to guide me and carry me through difficult situations, because the nature of life is like the difficult things are going to keep happening. We just have to like keep moving forward. And so
Yeah.
this whole concept of like, self-defense, knowing how to use a handgun or an arm, and being finding confidence through that process,
Mm-hmm.
empowering yourself, feeling empowered through that process. So that for some people, that is what they're going to need to help them step into that confidence and then they'll be able to do like deeper work. I don't know,
Yeah.
like sometimes that could be the thing it's like a frequency change. I don't know how to describe it. It's like something clicks, something shifts inside your psyche when
Yeah.
you truly feel confident and grounded and empowered within yourself. And I just remembered something that we're moving. So people are talking about moving into the age of Aquarius, how we're in the transition now, like obviously, right? Especially with Pluto entering Aquarius. And in human design, there's also ages. Like we go through these ages. And the next one that we're coming into is actually Kali. Like
Mm.
in human design, through the lens of human design, it's like the time of Kali. And she is this like crazy. I wish I could show you a picture, but like
I
she is,
know I have the image of her in my mind. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah. So and anybody that doesn't, it's like she's this Hindu goddess. Like she's like a dark goddess, and
Hmm.
she embodies the darkness and the power found within the darkness, and also the strength to like pierce through, like slash through the things in that are like in the way of your true healing, right? And so
Yeah.
she's kind of like a guide in through the darkness. And so that's what's coming according to human design. And this whole
Mm.
idea of like a woman knowing how to use a firearm and things like that is it's part of that. It's like we're just finding ourselves wherever it is we need to find ourselves. And in this particular example, it can definitely be something that awakens for someone, especially women, since we're talking about that,
Yeah.
that their ability to free themselves and heal and truly heal themselves. It can
Yeah.
be a step in that process, and I do recognize that. And yeah, I felt it myself. Like I feel so much more like I'm calmer now because just that one freaking lesson, I know I got to take many more to really get good at it, but like, you know what I mean? Just that one tiny thing. I'm like, okay, wow, that my energy just totally changed. And it's
Yeah.
crazy because it's like I never really even touched a gun before, maybe once in my life before.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like, I've had women that I was the instructor for them, the perfect one, because they're on a line of shooters with women and they're taking their first shots after we warmed up and practiced for a while and they were finally ready. And they'll just start crying and like tears streaming down their face
Wow, I just got chills.
because the act of shooting, like it, I just got the chills too, that it just opened up something that needed to be released and needed to be healed and seen. And for some of them, it's trauma, like some sort of
Yeah,
trauma buried in them. Maybe they even forgot about it, but
right.
the act of the shooting that firearm brought it to the surface for them to see, for them to feel. And then they release it. And then they take a little break, come back, then they finish the rest of the class powerfully and just like leave in a different energy. And I know I'm like, I'm doing the Lord's work here. Like that's what that feels like. It's just a beautiful thing. There's nothing that compares to the feeling of helping somebody through that and seeing the transition or the change they go through, the shift. There's like a shift in
No.
mindset, a shift in energy that
Yes.
happens. And
Yes.
I've gotten to witness it so many times, and I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do, and it's so easy and natural for me. Um, and it's an important part of myself to be able to share with these women that I can connect with them on that somebody else can't. And I have witnessed a lot of other women across the country that are doing similar work to me, and we're all working together. We're all like bright spots in different areas that are shining our light in different ways, and it all works together cohesively.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was a beautiful way to summarize and like really give this whole conversation like all that meaning because that's what I was getting at. It's like it's healing. It's freaking healing. How like something that seems so scary can be healing. That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, and by itself, a firearm is just a tool. It's just an inanimate object, but depending on whose hands it is and what they're doing with it, that's where, the shifts happen. And so more women being empowered, and I'll end that with saying in the last 5 years, we've had a shift in the world in the United States where there's millions of new gun owners and over 50% of them are women.
Wow.
Like massive upshift. But if you buy the tool, don't know what to do with it, that's where that change needs to happen. Like, how do I learn?
Right.
How do I get better? How do I empower myself with knowledge? It's about education.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on the podcast with me. This was such a great and fun and I think very enlightening conversation, and a conversation that just like I truly feel needs to be had more often. I can't wait to keep learning and to keep feeling more empowered within myself, more powerful within myself, which is, it's like the missing something that's being brought into my life that was missing before, right?
Yeah.
And yes, so I highly recommend, if you guys want to work with Stephanie, to definitely work with her. How can people get a hold of you if they are wanting to learn?
Through Instagram, it's pretty easy. You can just find me at Bellatrix Training. So Bellatrix Training. And I have a Facebook page, a website, bellatrixtraining.com. Then my other page, which is my name, Stephanie.Mcganty, is like a mix of everything me and firearms training. So I've got basically two pages.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you again, and maybe we'll
Thank
do
you.
another conversation later on. But I really, really enjoyed this. Thanks
Me
for,
too. Thank you for having me on.
yes, you're welcome. And so thank you, all of you guys that were listening to the podcast, and we will see you again next time and hope that you really enjoyed it. Satnam.